The views expressed in this program do not necessarily reflect those of this station.
Welcome to Insights into Northeast Michigan, a WBKB News public affairs program. Insights deals with the issues affecting those in the community as well as Northeast Michigan and the state. And now, Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Climate change.
We're seeing climate change unfolding. We're seeing actually predictions that have been made some decades ago turning into reality.
We think that this is the most extreme version, and it's not based on facts. It's not data driven. We'd like to see something that is more data driven. It's based on modeling, which is extremely hard to do when you're talking about the climate. Again, our focus is on making sure we have the safest, cleanest air and water, and the president's going to do exactly that.
Lack of moral leadership is worse than cowardice. It is a death sentence.
Reefs around the world face threats from warming water temperatures, from water quality issues, from direct impacts, from overfishing. So all around the world we face a lot of the same problems.
Mr. President, have you read the climate report yet? I've seen it, I've read some of it, and it's fine.
Arguably one of the hottest issues facing the world. But what exactly is it? And how does it affect us as Michiganders and, more specifically, Northeast Michiganders? How do people talk about it? And how do we bridge the gap between political beliefs and ideologies to gain a common understanding? Where's the evidence? That's what we'll be exploring today in Insights into Northeast Michigan. In 1990, George H.W. Bush signed into law the Global Change Research Act, which requires research that takes an extensive look at human-induced and natural process of global change. Basically, every 4 years, a number of government councils and agencies prepare a report for Congress and the President to look over and respond to the potential future and current environmental issues facing the nation. The fourth National Climate Assessment came out the day after Thanksgiving this year, and findings didn't paint a happy picture for the future of America as well as the world. It said that Earth's climate is changing faster than any point in history of the modern civilization due to human activity. But current leaders aren't seeing eye to eye on this issue and the political gridlock facing the country.
I don't believe it. No, I don't believe it. And here's the other thing. You're going to have China and Japan and all of Asia and all of these other countries, addresses our country. Right now we're at the cleanest we've ever been, and that's very important to me. But if we're clean, but every other place on earth is dirty, that's not so good. So I want clean air, I want clean water, very important.
This report is going to live day after day, month after month, year after year. This is not a one-day story. This is conclusive evidence by the President's own administration of how bad climate change will be for incomes, for families, for workers, for farmers, for cities. Can't run away from it anymore. It's about time they face the reality and work with us to do something before it's too late.
So what is climate change? We called up Kate Madigan, the chair of Michigan Climate Action Network, and researcher Brent Lofgren from NOAA's Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory to find out what exactly it is.
Observation and research by scientists have confirmed what scientists have understood for more than a century, is that the burning of fossil fuels is releasing carbon dioxide and other emissions that are trapping the sun's heat in the atmosphere. So the global temperatures have been slowly warming, and so now we are seeing the impacts of this warming planet, and so we're seeing a number of impacts right here in Michigan, and then some of the more significant impacts we're seeing in other parts of the country and around the world.
I took a challenge over a year ago to write a haiku about the science that I do. And the haiku is, greenhouse molecules. They vibrate with energy, shoot it back to Earth, and that is really what forms the basis of it. The greenhouse effect has both natural and human-caused parts of it. So there's a certain amount of carbon dioxide that was in the atmosphere at pre-industrial times. We think that's about 280 parts per million, judging by little bubbles in ice cores. And that has now risen to about 410 parts per million. So it's about 150% as much as it was before the Industrial Revolution.
Now that we have a better understanding of what climate change is, we have to look at how it's affecting the state of Michigan and the Great Lakes.
Extreme rainfall events have increased over the last century in Michigan, and these trends are going to continue. The heaviest rainfall, so like top 1% of storms, very heavy rain events, now drop 30% more precipitation in the Midwest than they did 50 years ago. And so this means when we have a rainfall event, it dumps a lot more water, and a lot of our infrastructure, our stormwater, sewage, and our roads and our gutters can't handle that. So it's leading to more flooding, more erosion, and more runoff into our waterways. And that's also leading to declining water quality and impacts on the Great Lakes. And so some examples of this that we're seeing, there was flooding in Detroit in the summer of 2014 that caused highways to close and flooded thousands of basements. And then there was flooding again in Detroit in September of 2016. There was historic flooding in Grand Rapids in 2013, and there was historic flooding just this summer in the Upper Peninsula in Houghton and Menominee that the governor called a state of emergency.
Even though there is somewhat of a theoretical link between very heavy rainfalls and climate change, the most extreme events are difficult to really measure statistically like that.
Coming up on Insights into Northeast Michigan, we chat with Brent on some of his research and the amount of risk climate change can have on the Great Lakes. Plus, we chat with Stephanie Gondula about climate change's potential effect on shipwrecks. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Insights into Northeast Michigan. We've been talking about what effects climate change could have on the Great Lakes and Michigan. Brent Lofgren explains what he's been working on recently and how it's hard to pinpoint exactly how climate change is affecting the Great Lakes and our area.
When you start asking more specific questions, like what does this do to the level of the Great Lakes? What is it going to do to this forest? What's going to be the change in temperature at one particular location? Those questions involve greater degrees of uncertainty. But uncertainty is a two-edged sword. So you can kind of make your best central tendency prediction, and things might be not as bad as that, or they might be worse. What people thought it would do to the levels of the Great Lakes was based on faulty methodology. So, it's a little bit embarrassing to the scientific community that there was that bad result, but I personally am trying hard to roll that back. So the older results showed near certainty of significant drops in the levels of Great Lakes over the next century. And that was due to a poor estimation of evaporation from the land surrounding the lakes, not the lakes themselves. And more recent work that I've done has shown kind of more of a central tendency toward very little change, although there's uncertainty around that.
Stephanie Gondula works for the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary, home of the Great Lakes Maritime Heritage Center, a special museum dedicated to shipwrecks. But this hub of history also offers different lectures and films that focus on the environment. a place of history and education for Northeast Michigan. The Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary protects shipwrecks. I mean, you study different types of shipwrecks here. There's all sorts of information that you can access at the Great Lakes Maritime Heritage Center. And you go out in the field, exploring these different shipwrecks, learning, collecting data. Could there be evidence of climate change on these historic beacons?
That's a great question, and yes, indeed, we are all about shipwrecks and the history of the Great Lakes here at the Heritage Center. And with the fluctuations in water levels, I think is where we would see the most direct effect on any of the shallow shipwreck sites. So these sites are protected by the cold fresh water of Lake Huron. And those shallow sites, if they become exposed, they're no longer protected underwater, and so they would be exposed to the elements. So that's one place where we could see these changing lake levels, affect the shipwrecks.
And you said deeper water generally protects some of our deeper wrecks out there.
For sure. I mean, that cold fresh water, if it's a shipwreck nearly 200 feet below the surface, it's pretty much, sealed in time.
And we do have quite a few shipwrecks closer to shore, shallower waters throughout, not just the Alpena area, but as well as the Sunrise side altogether.
That's right. I mean, that's one of the special aspects about the Marine Sanctuaries. These sites, these recreational opportunities, if you will, are indeed at a variety of depths. So people can snorkel, people can kayak, people can even visit some, that are on the beach. So there's a lot of shallow shipwrecks.
You recently received quite a bit of training and experience in talking about climate change to people and introducing those ideas to folks that come into the museums, that come into the sanctuary. Tell me about your experiences and what did you learn?
So this was a great opportunity for a colleague of mine here at the sanctuary, Sarah Waters, the education coordinator, and myself received a grant to undertake very specific climate change communication training. So we're not climate scientists, but we are trained to talk to people about climate change. And this nationwide effort to train people, educators, informal educators like us, has really reached a lot of institutions and resulting in reaching a lot of the public. What social science has found is that most people, over 70% of people, really trust and look for guidance from what we call, the frontline staff at the museums, at zoos, at aquariums, and even historical museums like here at the Heritage Center. So there's a ready audience there that is looking for guidance on the issues that our environment and thus the people face today. So this training was a couple years ago that we did it, and it was quite involved. We were able to travel to 3 different zoos across the country and science institutions such as Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and learn from climate scientists, but more importantly, or as importantly, learn the proven and tested and true techniques in talking about climate change and how to really connect with people and access, if you will, shared values. So it was such a great lesson in how this issue transcends political viewpoints. It's all about connecting to these shared values that each of us have. That's why they're called shared. And no matter what, how you vote, no matter your economic bracket, what social science has found is that the shared values are about protection and responsible management. And those sound like kind of big concepts and big terms, but it's really what they found people respond to. And they did this social science research over thousands and thousands of interviews in the US and in Canada, thousands and thousands of people, and testing different ways of communicating and appealing to different values. A value that might not work would be, and they tested this, would be, well, here's this beautiful expanse of water, and we want to protect it. And that, or not saying we want to protect it, but I mean this beautiful expanse of water, and showing these images. And people might be, those might be interesting and attractive images, but it doesn't necessarily encourage or inspire action on climate change. And another value that you might think would work, but actually did not work as well as the shared values of responsible management and protection, is what they call the cute critter value. So, I mean, you have a cute picture of a little Arctic fox, maybe, that looks sad and forlorn out there on the ice. You might look at that and say, that's such a powerful image, and it might drive you, but it actually doesn't work. So that social science research, and then using that research, the social scientists developed this communication training that has really been powerful, I think, for our staff here, and also powerful for the visitors that come here. And I have seen time and time again how well received these messages are when you couch it in those terms.
Up next on Insights into Northeast Michigan, we'll continue our conversation with Stephanie Gondula. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation with Steph. How do you handle certain types of conversations like that when folks walk into the museum? And have you seen a lot, or is this becoming more of a hot topic here at the sanctuary to talk about with guests and visitors?
Well, I think we're not your typical, obviously we're about shipwrecks, right? So we're not your typical zoo or aquarium that has those issues up front when people walk in. We are talking about shipwrecks. So we don't have those. It's not like somebody comes in wanting to ask us questions about climate change right off the bat. However, one really awesome and effective tool that we have is our Science on a Sphere, the big 6-foot theater and globe that we can portray data sets, portray images and films right on the sphere that is it's the Earth, and it's really powerful in showing what is happening on our planet. And that is where we have found it most effective to talk about the issues that our environment faces and how we can protect people from these very issues. And so another thing that I found that I was pleasantly surprised about is that the conversations turned, like after our training and after employing these programs in the Science on a Sphere Theater, the conversations all became very positive. And we didn't have a lot of negative ones before, but if it had been brought up before climate change, there may have been, some people saying, well, what causes it? Are doubting what causes it or arguing about what causes it. And when you change the conversation to not even addressing that and talking more about what we can do, it really became much more positive and much more productive. So I would say that the Science on a Sphere has been such an effective tool in communicating about climate change and really talking about the nitty-gritty of what individuals can do and also understanding what it's all about. I think that, I didn't fully understand the issues that we're facing caused by climate change until I did this communication training. So what an interesting way to go about it. I didn't have to go to, get my PhD in marine biology or climatology to understand these issues. So everybody can truly understand it.
And it sounds like folks can make a difference on their own. And that's just being a good steward of the environment, being a good steward of where we live and where our kids live and where our grandkids live and things like that.
For sure, being a good steward is very important, and there's so many ways you can do that, but also really understanding, where this is stemming from. I think it helps to understand, for example, here's just one example, the difference between regular carbon dioxide and what we call rampant carbon dioxide. So kids in 5th grade learn that carbon dioxide is a part of natural processes. Animals exhale carbon dioxide so the plants can grow and provide oxygen for those that breathe oxygen, and the planet needs that, of course. So regular carbon dioxide, a part of natural processes, but rampant carbon dioxide is the result of burning fossil fuels. It's as simple as that. So all the coal and natural gas that we're burning has really built up and created an effect very similar to like a heat-trapping blanket around the planet. And that heat builds and builds, and then you have a warming planet and definitely a warming ocean.
Now I know that this is obviously the focus here is shipwrecks. It's all about shipwrecks, but you employ a number of different ways of communicating climate change throughout the year, whether it be through film or film, lecture, different things of that sort. Why do you believe it's so important to have things like this for our community and for Northeast Michigan?
It is indeed important, and I think that being able to be part of a community that can sit and hear a program in the, you know, in the Science on a Sphere, or watch a film like Chasing Ice, for example. We're going to be showing that as part of our cinema series in February, or nearly all the films that the film festival shows. Being able to sit as a community and learn and watch these films and then discuss them, I think, is such an important part of the community coming together to understand the issues that the people are faced with, and the environment is faced with, and then talk about what they can do. And that, I'm very, very proud that the Heritage Center provides that space, really, to learn and then to discuss and then to go out into the community and act. So the Film Festival is definitely a great tool for that. Just sitting here in the theater, I mean, this has truly become a great space for learning and for action.
We definitely have a lot of political gridlock. Even in a small town, you see it more, because, you know, some people want change, a lot of people don't want change. How do you affect a community that's constantly kind of going against the grain?
Right. Well, what I'd like to see, and what I think is the result and can be the result of the communication techniques and the power of film, if you will, is that people are inspired to drive community level changes, such as, you know, transitioning to renewable energy instead of non-renewable energy, like wind and solar, and working hard to, you know, maybe even though we are a small community, we do have the trolley system, so depending on mass transit more than each individual driving their car. So the community level solutions are really what we need to focus on today.
With everything that's come out, with all of the data, you know, with all of these reports that have come out in the media and folks talking about it, do you think that conversation is going to begin to change, or do you think it's kind of stayed consistent the whole way through?
I think I've definitely seen a change. I've seen people more comfortable talking about climate change, more comfortable asking about it, and more people interested and really seeing that they need to be invested in doing something about it. So I actually am hopeful, and I see people banding together to protect their you know, fellow citizens from these issues that are facing our environment. So I have a lot of hope.
And that will wrap it up for our look into climate change. Be sure to tune in next Sunday to Insights into Northeast Michigan.
Insights into Northeast Michigan is produced by WBKB News. If you have any comments, suggestions, or topics you would like to see on a future show, please email WBKB News. This has been a production of Thunder Bay Broadcasting Corporation. All rights reserved.
The furniture and set design for this episode of Insights is provided by Young Appliance Art Van Furniture on US 23 South, Alpena.